Welcome back to a new episode of Mastering Programming. In today's episode, we're going to have a fully detailed tutorial on lists in Python. We're going to learn how to define lists, how to add to a list, how to remove elements of a list, how to loop over lists, how to get the count of a list, the length of the list, and how to retrieve an element of the list. Also, how to edit elements in a list. Without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing we need to do is how to define lists. I'm going to start by actually defining empty lists, and to do this, all you need to do is simply give your list a name. For example, here I'm going to give it the name of empty. I'll say equal to, I'll open and close a bracket, and now we've got an empty list. Now if I try to print this, so I'll simply type in print, and then I'll pass in the name empty to print our list, and I go ahead and print this by running it. You can see that it gets printed, but we simply just get an empty list printed. Now, how do we actually create a list that's not empty? Well, let's go over here and create another list, and this one we'll call it list A, and I'll say it's equal to, open and close a bracket, and I want to add some elements inside so that it's not an empty list. I'll put 1, 2, 3, and because this is Python, you can actually add other elements that are not necessarily numbers at the same list. For example, I can put a comma, and here I'll say not a number, and then here I can say something like cat, and then here I can go back to say 4, for example, and you can see that we've got integers, numbers, and strings in the same list normally. Now, in case you're wondering, even though we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements inside of our list, in Python it's just like any other programming language. We start at 0. So this is element 0, this is element 1, element 2, element 3, element 4, and element 5. Now let's go ahead and print our new list. So I'll simply say list A, and if I go ahead and run this, you can see that we print it properly over here. Let's go ahead and remove our print statement and move forward to the next example of how to add to a list. So how do we add an element to a list? For this purpose, I'm going to use the original list that we created over here, list A. And basically, I want to add a number to, I want to add an element after number 4. Let's go ahead over here. And all I need to do is simply say list A dot append. And this allows me to actually put any element over here. For example, I can put something like 5. And now if I go over here and type in print list A and run this, you can see that we've got the normal list 1, 2, 3, not remember cat, and 4, but we also have that new element that we added, element 5. And the best thing is that we can do this multiple times. We can go over here and say list A dot append, and this time I'm gonna put a string, so I'll put something like 6. And if I run this, you realize that now we've got added 2 elements, element 5 and 6, all in the same list. So now that we keep on adding things, how do we remove an element from a list? Well, to do this, it's actually very simple. And again, let's just remove this. I'll use the same list that we created, and basically I want to remove 6. So I'm going to say list A dot pop, and I'm going to click it. And now if I run this, make sure, look, we actually added 6 over here. So now if I run this, we forgot to print list A. So now if I run that, you can see that we added 5 and we added 6, and then we removed the last element, which is 6. So now that's removed. To stop confusing you, I'm actually going to remove those 2 lines so that you can see that our list ends at 4. But because this code here that we wrote that has list A.pop, it's going to end at cat. If I run this again, you can see that we removed the last element, which was 4, and simply now our list is cat. There we go. Now, how to loop over a list. Now, this is very important because throughout your time programming, you're definitely going to use for loops or while loops or any sort of loop on lists. So let's get started by removing these 2 lines. And for this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to do a while loop and how to do a for loop on lists. For I in list A, I'll put 2 dots and go underneath, print, and first I want to show you what I actually is. So if I go ahead and run this, I basically represents each element of the list. So what we're doing is, for each element in list A, go ahead and print I, and that allows you to actually print each specific element in that list. Now we can also do some really cool stuff here. For example, we can check if I is equal to 3, print I. So in this case, we're going to loop over our list, and only when I is equal to 3, that's when we're going to print it. Let's run it, and you can see that we were able to run, or we're able to go through the entire list and only print the element that's equal to 3. Awesome. Let's also do something else. So we can do this using a while loop. So I'm going to remove that, and I'll say while, or actually let's create I is equal to 0. And what I will do is while I, which is equal to 0, is less than 3, print, and I will say list A, open and close a bracket, and put I. And I'll explain exactly what we're about to do now. Let's go ahead and run this. Ooh, I forgot to actually stop I, so let's go, or increase I, so I'm plus or equal to 1. There we go. And now if I run this, we go 1, 2, 3. So what happened there? Well, we're going over the list and we're printing each single element, because I keeps on increasing, so we're printing the element from list at index 0, which is 1. We increase it by 1. Now we're printing at number 1, which is 2, and then number 2, which is actually 3. So this is our while loop. Now I'm gonna move to our next example over here, where we get the count of the list. How do you do this? Well, we actually have a predefined function that we can use, and it's very useful. And all we need to do is simply, let's actually assign that count of a list into something. So I'm going to say count is equal to list A dot, and you can type LE for length. There we go. And maybe just for indentation I can do that. And then let's go ahead and print that count. And now if I run this, it says 6. Why is it 6? Well, let's go over here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements. So using the function len bracket, and then you just put the list that you've got, it will print you how many elements are in that list. Let's go ahead and try see how many elements are in the empty list. So I'm simply going to pass empty and run this, and it will tell you 0. And that's because we've got 0 elements in this list, while we had 6 elements inside of this list. Now, how to retrieve a specific element from the list. And we actually did this in the loop over here. To get a specific element, all you need to do is this. I'm going to simply say print, or actually let's assign it to something. So I'll say element is equal to, and then you're going to mention the list that you want. So list A, put 2 brackets, and then here you're going to put the position of the element. For example, over here, let's say you want not a number. We know that this has 0, 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to go over here and we're going to pass 3. And now if I, new keyboard, if I type in print element and run this, we're going to get the element that has a number. And that's because we identified its position. So we basically said, I want you to assign element the element inside of the list at position 3. Let's say we wanted number 1. Well, this is 0, so we're going to go over here. And we're going to say print to us the element at position 0. If I run it, you will see that it says 1, just like over here. Let's move forward, and finally, it's how to edit the elements inside of a list. Now this can be a little bit confusing, but it's actually very easy. I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to say list A. Inside of here, I'm going to say which position. So let's say position 0 is equal to 5000. All I'm doing here is I'm basically saying the element inside of position 0, I want it to be equal to 5000. And now if I print list A, instead of having 1 at the beginning like we did when we defined it, we basically changed whatever was at position 0, which was 1, to be equal to 5000. That's it for this tutorial. I hope you did learn a lot. You basically learned everything you probably use in your beginner days with Python when it comes to lists. But if you want to see some more challenging, make sure you watch my other YouTube tutorials on Python, especially the ones that I'm showing right now regarding how to sort a list and so on. Please make sure you leave a like and a subscribe to this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a good day.